Welcome to Multi-Level Mormon Missionary.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm PD, this is Sister PD, and it's date night again. How about that? 2 weeks later. How's your 2 weeks been?
Yes, thank you for having me back, PD. I feel very unprepared for this discussion or episode. I'm putting the fact that I'm here down to me having pediatritis. That's a little bit like missionary-itis, if anybody wasn't sure.
Okay, fantastic. She has an itis for me. If anyone's noticed, Sister PD has been color coding our outfits for these episodes. This week we're pink.
To make the investigators wink.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like you practiced it. Okay, this week let's take a look what we're on. The restoration-ish Mormon Missionary Third discussion. That's the one we're going to be taking a look at this evening. But before we get there, every now and then in Mormon land, something happens that you can't not discuss. And I think tonight we need to just have a brief discussion. Sister PD doesn't know we're going to discuss this. We will be getting her genuine first reaction to what we're about to discuss. And that is the Associated Press article that came out this week. 7 years of sex abuse, how Mormon officials let it happen. And trigger warning, obviously, we're going to discuss now just for a couple of minutes what was in this article, the church's response to the article. But for me, having been a bishop during the time when this hotline has been in play and never knowing about it, this article they put out really kind of hit home. So it was a story from Arizona, and it speaks of a young girl. MJ was a tiny black-haired girl, just 5 years old, when her father admitted to his bishop that he had been sexually abusing her. The father, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and an admitted pornography addict, was in counseling with the bishop when he revealed the abuse. The bishop, who was also a family physician, followed church policy and called what church officials had dubbed the helpline for guidance. But the call offered little help for MJ. Lawyers for the church, widely known as the Mormon Church, who staffed the helpline around the clock, told Bishop John Herod not to call the police or child welfare officials. Instead, he kept the abuse secret. They said, "You absolutely can do nothing," Herod said in a recorded interview with law enforcement. So a bishop reaches out using the helpline. And in the church's news article, the Deseret News article that they brought out, saying that the Associated Press have totally kind of taken this out of context, they said that the hotline has been going since 1995, and I was a bishop in the mid-2000s, never knew the hotline, never had the number, didn't know it existed until years later. So that's how well the hotline was publicized for bishops and stake presidents to use. Over here on the right-hand side is what the Associated Press has said is the process that this bishop went through and that the bishops do go through. The bishop has a query. Oh, not that one. A bishop has a query. Rather than going straight to law enforcement, they call the abuse helpline. The abuse helpline passes the information onto Curtin McConkie Law Firm, and then Curtin McConkie Law Firm let the bishop know what he can do next.
Yeah, you have sprung this one on me, PD. But just from the few comments that you said there, and obviously this is not the topic of our discussion tonight, but you said that helpline had been around since 1999. One of the things that I'd love to have answered is how often does that helpline receive updating, training? What are they governed by? It's that kind of thing. If we're still offering 1919 something help to situations, it's just, and again, my heart goes out for that young child, because I believe that they think as long as they deal with the situation, there's no help required for the child. And obviously that, as a mother, breaks my heart.
Well, this father went on to have another child and abuse that child for 7 years, so continued to abuse 2 young children for 7 years. In the article, it speaks of 2 bishops. The first bishop, Herod, was the one that called the helpline, and then when he was handing it over to the next bishop, told him of the situation, but the church had told them there was nothing that they could do, and they apparently said to each other, "It's sad that there's nothing we can do about this," because the church says they were held back or protected under kind of like you can tell a priest what you want and they can't say anything law in Arizona. But then these people have pointed out that the law in Arizona is that there is that sort of priest privilege, but that in the cases of child abuse and these sorts of situations, it doesn't matter. So
Yeah.
the church was saying that they can't say anything because they will be sued by the the abuser for breaking that privilege.
Well, the good news is they've probably got enough money and a really good law firm if they do get sued.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know how they got found out? They got found out because this dad was also filming things, and in New Zealand, one of the videos that he'd filmed showed up in a bust in New Zealand. So it was the New Zealand police force that sorted it out and, you know, cut through all the crap all the way from New Zealand, cut through all the church's crap and said, "This guy's doing this." And there's a video on the article as well from the Associated Press that they put together. And I think it doesn't say it's the Relief Society president, but the way that she's talking, she's speaking about visiting teachers going to the home and reporting back to her that they were seeing things, the way that he treated the children, the way that he was with the children, the things that he saw in the home, that there was something wrong, but the church just couldn't do anything, which was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I find this a little bit tricky because at the end of the day, we are not the church. You are not the church. I am not the church. If I was a sister going ministering and I felt that there was something that needed to be done, I am not the church. I'm an individual. I'm not governed by any rules. You act as an individual should act. And it is sad that it took the New Zealand police to discover or make known what a very large organization already knew.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, it blows my mind. I thought that we could do a whole episode on it, but I just felt like we needed to address that before we move on because it is something that's going on, and I think it is something that we'll see kind of a little bit of a sea change with the church. I know that they already kind of have said, now we go straight to law enforcement, and that this is from years ago, but I'm guessing it won't be the only one. I'm guessing
No.
more will come forwards, unfortunately.
And
And
when you put this article out there, I was just going to ask you, what country was that in? And I know that it makes no difference, PD, but I just feel that every time I see an article, I automatically, and please feel free to bring me down, people, I would automatically go, is that America? What I'm trying to say is there's still something within me that feels the church is different in America to in the UK. And then I probably feel that it's not this, like you said, is happening, all over.
no, we see
We
paedophiles
do.
in church all the time disappear whilst they go to jail and then come back and they're like, "Oh yeah, nothing's wrong." But yeah, this was in Arizona. So the girls and the family of the girls are suing the church. So the dad took his own life in jail in 2017.
Oh wow.
The mum accepted 2 charges of child abuse. And yeah, they're suing the church for not acting upon because there's a
So that didn't really work out for him then, the
no,
church. That slightly backfired because they're being sued anyway.
yeah, but
Good on him.
because there's what is it called? Reporters, anyone, the mandatory reporters, and the church are mandatory reporters. I think, I hope I got that right, and they failed to do that, and I think that's the basis that they're suing them on.
Good.
Okay, well, we will move on, but before we do, thank you to Tom Kaufman for your donation. The donations from last time, guys, got Sister PD this awesome tripod so that we can hear her better this time.
And she's also not wearing mini PD headphones. I've been gifted by PD a set of headphones that mean I won't be going away feeling like someone's just
Yeah, so it all goes back into the show for making Sister PD a little bit more comfortable. Thank you for that, and thank you to everyone for all the likes that we're getting on the videos. 200 is the goal for this video, and let's move on and give you something to like about it. Before we do, Sister PD, how did you like the thumbnail this week?
Am I allowed to be honest on this show,
Oh,
PD?
go on. You're honest.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused by it, to be honest. Is he holding the melon? Is the pirate laughing at him? Is he retorting his words? But PD, you're the professional and I'm just the assistant. So what do I know?
I thought it was wicked. You know, usually that's the way it goes in our marriage. I think something's amazing. Sister PD puts me down, tells me stop being stupid and be more sensible.
Yes, remember viewers, I get all the crazy ideas first and then I try to make them a little less crazy so that they're palatable for you.
Okay. So the discussions, the ones that we're basing all of these episodes on are the 1986 discussions. This is the third discussion, but I've just put up on the screen the order of the discussions next to the order of the lessons from the current Preach My Gospel. So we've got the 1 to 6 there. We've obviously already done 1 and 2. If you've not seen them, head back and take a look. But they mixed it up in Preach My Gospel. I guess they thought things needed to be a little bit more ordered, and they got some new psychologists in that said if we give it to them this way, they're more likely to believe us and take it. So this week we're doing the restoration, and it seems like we've done a lot of Joseph Smith in the first 3. In the plan of our Heavenly Father, there was like 1 paragraph on Heavenly Father. There was 1 page on Heavenly Father, 1 page on Jesus, and then the rest of the book was about Joseph Smith. Then we got some Jesus last time, and this time we've got more Joseph Smith. So it's like Jesus in a Joseph sandwich. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, this one's all about Joseph again. And what the church do is they start with identifying what the truth is that they want to give you. Okay, they kind of shape truth for the recipient, and then they say that the truth has been taken away from them, so they give them a hole in their lives, and then they tell them how they're going to fill that hole. So it's almost like someone selling you something you didn't know you needed when you didn't really need it. They just told you needed it.
Well, yes. Sales pitch.
Okay. Truth versus error. So the church gets straight in there with unchanging truth. At the top, the truths of the plan of our Father in heaven are eternal and unchanging. Now, I would challenge at this point, who is our Father in heaven? Because there are so many different Father in heavens for different religions at different times who have different truths. So the first thing you could say there is which one, obviously. And they go on about the basis for all the commandments. But then in this second paragraph, the ideas of men are limited. This is where I think they're creating the hole. This is where they're giving the investigator the problem. You know, they're saying that your ideas are limited. So any idea that you or any scientist you've ever read about or any scholar, anyone like that that has told you about the plan of God that is different to what we're about to tell you is limited, because the ideas of men are always limited and changing. Human wisdom can never lead to a full understanding of eternal truth. Whereas I would say right now, that first sentence, you could replace the word men with the church and say the ideas of the church are always limited and changing.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. PD, can I trouble you for a question?
Hit me.
So what I'm thinking is I always try to act as your investigator if possible. And I'm wanting to know if you had more or less success with different age groups. And the reason I'm asking that is you're saying that this discussion is 2 young men rocking up to people and telling them, you know, what is truth. And I just wonder whether you had any more favor or less favor with different age groups? You know, is there that thing that the older generation would say, what do these two younguns know? Or is there that thing that the older generation are more trusting, and actually that it was the younger generations? Bear in mind that your mission was pretty much pre the internet. You know, I just wonder how people would react to you, you know, telling them this.
I think it didn't just depend on age, it depended on background.
Okay.
So older investigators with a religious background and a less scholarly point of view on life were great. But then you've got younger investigators who come from humble religious backgrounds in different parts of the world. So young English people were
Not interested.
not interested. You know, they got the internet. People from Western society, they've grown up in a secular generation. They weren't really interested. But people coming from, you know, third world countries, immigrants from Africa or from the Middle East, even, you know, and yeah, poorer parts of the world were more interested because religion takes a bigger place in their life from birth. You know, they grow up in very religious societies, very Christian societies a lot of the time. So,
And not to, sorry, I've cut you
go
off,
on.
not to detract too much. I guess that's another reason the church wanted all the elders looking a particular way, as in, you know, this is good for us. This is, you know, you see what I'm trying to say? The milk honey thing, you know, you can be as we are if you do as we do.
Yeah,
Clean
absolutely.
shaven, well dressed, very respectful,
Yeah,
a picture of health, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I was a picture of health, but I get what you're saying. Yeah,
You were a picture of hair back then. That's enough.
the clean cut guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
but basically, this section sets up the fact that the investigator is lacking truth, and I'm about to tell you where you can find it. So Christ formed his church. This always used to trouble me because it said Christ formed his church, but the only thing it says is he called apostles and prophets and gave them authority to teach the gospel and act in his name. This authority is called the priesthood, and we get to that soon. But how does that compare to the church today? Because if all Christ's church was apostles and prophets, you know, you don't read in the Bible about Jesus going to sacrament meeting on a Sunday or having general conference or, you know, just setting up a physical building or anything like that. You know, he goes to the synagogue. He's a Jewish radical who, yeah, he's preaching at temple, at a synagogue, in different places. Classifying it as a church, I think, is a stretch. As a movement, yes, but as a physical church where today they'd say God's house is a house of order, and that's why we have all of this red tape. That's why we have all of these men sat in this hierarchy, and then they compare that to Jesus, and you're like, no, that's not what. As far as we're aware, if there was a Jesus, it's not what the Bible leads me to believe Jesus's church was. It was just more of a movement at the time, and that all that organization came later.
I would openly say and have said to you, PD, that as we go through these discussions and I think about the things I thought I knew, I really don't know that much
No,
about Jesus and the time that he was on the earth, organizing, as you just called it, his church. And I realize now that my 30 something years of being taught week on week kind of left me lacking about what I knew about Jesus.
yeah, he was just kind of a missionary, just go around, you know, and he was
Doing good.
yeah he was doing all the Jewish things, and then he was a radical, so he was kind of he got his own riff on it, and the Jews were always waiting for a Messiah. And I always like to tell people, I think Jesus was the Joseph of his day. You know, that Joseph Smith, if he were 2,000 years ago, you know, the Bible would be written about Joseph, not Jesus. That there's always those charismatic leaders of movements in their times, and whether Jesus is truly the Son of God, who knows?
But regardless of that, this discussion is going to tell you
He is.
you are lacking the truth, and I'm about to tell you where you can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So they go hard on Jesus' death here. After his death, Jesus continued to lead his church by revelation, and basically it teaches what revelation is and why you need it in your life. And this is why I say there's a revelation trap, because this person, this investigator, did not know until this very moment that they needed someone else to speak to God for them, and for someone else to tell them how to live their lives. And if they are to believe these two missionaries sat in front of them who have built a relationship of trust and who are taking them through this very manipulative psychological exercise of the discussions, then they're now entering into the revelation trap, which means that once you're in there, you are always beholden to the church to tell you what God wants you to do. You can't get away from that. You become reliant upon someone else's revelation to fulfill your life. Whereas before, you maybe felt that you could talk to God directly and you could have your own ideas about the universe, you could have your own ideas about Jesus. But once you go through this Rubicon, you're stuck in a revelation trap because you've given up your right to kind of steer your own course.
Yeah, I think differently, I suppose. I don't mean that
Yeah.
to sound too alarmist, but yeah, you're right. You, in a way, with the revelation, you're giving up your right to think differently or have a different opinion.
Yeah. Aaron Jarvis, Mission President taught us to commit investigators to baptism in lesson 1. When we did lesson 1, it says in there to commit them to baptism.
You
So
can't
that's
see my face, but I'm making that face in relation to Aaron's comment.
Work-
Really?
work most of the
Lesson
time.
1, and it worked most of the time. I don't know.
Aaron, where did you serve your mission? South America. I'm putting it on South America.
I remember I went back to saying missionaryitis, pediatritis, because sat at church on a Sunday when you were on your mission, and I was probably the girlfriend, wearing the big smile, wearing the big badge, proud of what you were doing. And yet our own missionaries would rock up with these investigators, and I think, where did they find these fools?
Yeah. Aaron, Philippines. That makes sense.
Okay.
If I found a house full of Filipinos, you teach that house till you're finished in that area. Like full of Filipinos, full of Africans, full of people from South America, the Middle East. Those people were just humble and would listen, and you could get some serious numbers out of those houses. Okay. Principle 2.
Oh, just to be clear, a number was a number was a number. You didn't get like double points for people who were related or lived in the same house or anything like that, did you?
Oh, you did, as long as you taught them separately.
You know what
Oh,
I'm
no,
trying
no,
to
no.
say, though?
Actually, no. If you taught a first lesson and there were 6 people there,
That was 6
that was
numbers.
6 first
Yeah,
lessons.
that's what I mean, but there's no bonus points.
No bonus points. No. I got my slide out of order. The church structure. Okay, so speaking about Jesus' church again, and the fact that we're pretty sure that this on the right hand side wasn't what he put together in the Bible. Okay, because this with the 70s and different things, the church just seems to have taken all of the Bible, or Joseph does at least, and said, right, we're going to have some of the Old Testament, we're going to have some of the New Testament, we're going to have a little bit of my own, and then we're going to call it a fullness of generations, and that's what it's gonna look like. But in early Mormonism, 1830 over here is the structure that you had in 1830. So you had the president of the high priesthood, and I'm assuming that would have been Joseph Smith, Oliver Cowdery, and Hiram, probably. This is 1832. Then you got the high priests, Bishop of Zion, Bishop of Kirtland, presiding elders, and then elders, priests, teachers, and deacons. But then everything changed slightly as the church grew in 1835. Now, 1835 is going to be an important year and date for this discussion as we go through. So the church expanded a lot, and it started creating these stake presidencies. It started creating patriarchs and 70s, and this is where the Old Testament starts coming in with the 70s. You compare this to New Testament Jesus, and it doesn't quite stack up. So thank you to John C. Hamer for that chart. Sister PD.
I'm just looking at it, astounded PD going, on the right, I kind of have no idea what's going on. Don't get me wrong, that is what I've been brought up with. And you would have one of those posters. Yeah, whether you try and remember all the names of the general authorities. Sorry, it's in reverse to the viewers, isn't it? On the left, with the background. But I'm hijacking your show here. I'm making it rubbish tonight. But I look at it going, I've got no idea what's going on the right, but I've also got no idea what's going on the left. And the point that I always say to you, PD, is I don't think that I questioned enough, did I? As in, I literally just would accept everything. So like you're now going to be talking about some of the differences. I don't know. It's just...
what I think it comes down to? It comes down to everyone having something to do. Because if you've not got something to do, you don't feel important enough and you can disappear. So I think as Joseph started to see more and more capable people coming into the church, he needed to give them something to do so that they could push the church forwards.
And you're climbing that ladder of power, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly
just
trying.
1 foot on a run would make you feel that you could get at some day quite far up it.
Joseph changed first presidency counselors like his underpants. He'd just be like, "Oh, William Law, yeah, come on in. John C. Bennett, yeah, you can come on in." And some of these guys turned out to be, according to the church at least, less than desirable characters. But I think he'd see people much like himself come into the church, and he'd be like, "You know what? I can use your kind of aura and get up and go," and he'd give them an important role, and then it'd all fall apart when he found out they were, sleeping around or whatever.
Remind me of that when we come on to Revelation later. Well, let's go there, and then I can give you my view of when I was selecting people for callings.
Okay. Apostasy. So this is a big one that we set up. We spoke about it in the first lesson, and I think it's interesting the church gives it its own section because they need to set up this apostasy between Jesus and now so that there was a reason for Joseph. Because if there was no apostasy between Jesus and now, then there was no need for any kind of restoration. So they define an apostasy as when the Lord takes his church away from the earth due to the wickedness of the people. And they talk about Adam. So from here on the left, this section underneath Principle 2 Apostasy, this is from Preach My Gospel Today. Sister PD, do you want to read that?
Yep. God revealed the gospel of Jesus Christ to Adam and gave him priesthood authority. Adam was the first prophet on the earth. By revelation, Adam learned of mankind's proper relationship with God the Father, his Son Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost, of the atonement and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and of the first principles and ordinances of the gospel. Adam and Eve taught their children these truths and encouraged them to develop faith and live the gospel in all aspects of their lives. Adam was followed by the other prophets, but over time, the posterity of Adam rejected the gospel and fell into apostasy, choosing to be unrighteous.
Awesome. So that was the process. The authority was given. Adam taught it to his children. They all rejected it, and they fell into apostasy. And it goes on saying that prophets such as Noah, Abraham, Moses, they were all the beginning of their dispensations because there were apostasies before them. So Noah being the obvious one, God killed everyone, stand-up guy. And Noah began that new dispensation with just him and 7 other people to populate the whole planet. So this is set up, and then it basically says that after Jesus died, there was an apostasy, that the apostles were rejected. And we do know from the Bible and different things, there were a lot of martyrs and different things, because imagine these people are going out and teaching what other people see to be heresies, and religion was the biggest thing back then. There was no Britain's Got Talent or anything like that. So they get quite upset with these people teaching heresies about a different God or about Jesus being this new God. So today we look at it and we're like, oh, that was Satan killing off the church. But this would say that God was killing off the church because the people were evil, and God takes away the church when the people are evil.
And to be clear, when you were teaching this as a missionary and you were saying to people, about apostasy, that was a bad thing or that was a good thing? The reason I say that is when I would always hear the word and would think about it, it was a bad thing. But I suppose in this context, you're kind of saying it needed to happen for Joseph to come on down. But how would it be portrayed to the investigator that the apostasy was a bad thing?
No, we'd portray it to the investigator that there were apostasies, boo, but that Joseph came and made it all better. So I guess you're saying it was a bad thing, but it was a bad thing that had to happen for a good reason.
Mm.
It's like the whole opposition in all things. Like the church can't be true unless there are apostates like us sat here spouting Satan's words that he's whispering in our ears. He's in the headphones now, telling us exactly what to say so there can be an opposition in all things. You get me?
All I can hear in their headphones is you telling me what to say.
Awesome. Right. Oh, mother of pearl. Yes, the apostasy never happened. So I was teaching this lesson to, I think it was a Catholic, and this guy, we found him in the area book, and he was like a 7-year-old media referral or something like that. And we decided we'd bus all the way out to where he lived and try and teach him. And he invited us in, really nice bloke. And apparently what happened was he'd rocked up to like the church open house or something where the building had been refurbished or whatever. And they had like a visitor's book, and he put his name and address in the visitor's book. That was his first mistake. So that name and address has been in the area book forever. And he once had like a video sent to him of Jesus and stuff. And we went out to visit him. And I was trying to teach him this lesson about apostasy. And he got really angry because I think, quite rightly, the Catholic Church has a record of basically everyone since Peter.
Yes.
So
You were telling me about this the other day.
yeah. So Joseph Smith, like the prophets, seers, and revelators today in the Mormon Church, or so-called prophets, claim an unbroken chain of authority back to Joseph Smith. And then Joseph Smith claims it from supernatural forces. Whereas the Catholic Church, now I'm not saying the Catholic Church is a true church or anything. I'm just saying this is what it is. This guy was saying the Catholic Church, and I didn't know at the time, has their records all the way back to the Apostle Peter and every apostle and bishop thereafter. So in that respect, you could say there wasn't an apostasy because the church that Peter set up after Jesus, and Jesus said that he was the rock upon which he would build his church in the book of John. So Peter's church is a true church at the time because he was a direct apostle of Jesus, and that church is now the Catholic Church. So this guy was trying to tell me that, and he said, "Do you know who carried through, the gospel through this apostasy you talk about?" And I was being really cocky, and I said to him, "No, but I think you're about to tell me." And he kicked us out. He didn't even tell me. He just kicked us out. He literally lost his crap, and I would as well because, yeah, Alyssa, Jesus never set up a church. No, we were just discussing that. More a movement than a church, I would say. So apostasy, we're setting up apostasy. We're telling the investigator that this has happened now, no matter what church you've been to, they're all apostate. And it is now Joseph's turn to fill the hole that we've just created. So God revealed the truth to Joseph Smith. Now, a lot of this we discussed in the first lesson. Go on.
Yeah, I don't want to go over it, but I can't help but feel that if I was a 14-year-old, and I was once, believe it or not, only a little bit before we met, and I was going to church with my parents. I assume Joseph went with his parents. I don't know that at that time I'd have been saying what my mum and dad say is wrong, and I think I'm going to go into a forest and find out for myself. I struggle to think now. I never did back then, but perhaps I do struggle to think now at 14, would he have been that brave to be that outspoken against his parents? Or the other ministers?
His dad was a drunk, so the father figure in the home wasn't what you might respect as a father figure. You know, there was probably different dynamics at that time.
Okay.
It was very much Victorian society, wasn't it? So the father was supposed to be the one.
Okay.
So the question there is, his brother Alvin was kind of the father in the home in that respect. And yeah, maybe Joseph, maybe he did. He was seen as the very spiritual one. And they would go to different churches all the time because they weren't settled. His family, I think, were going towards Presbyterian. He was going towards Methodism. So maybe not. But he was told to join none of the churches. Who could have come up with that response? You could have gone to the bookies and said he's about to see God and Jesus Christ and asked them which church is true. And they'd have given odds on all of them. But who would have said that God would have said none of them?
I struggle because I believed it so. I never ever questioned. It was just the perfect story, wasn't it? It was the perfect fairy tale. In my head, PD, I've got like Joseph Smith in a Disney movie where, everything's going wrong and there's some sort of a villain and then he just comes along and saves the day. So yeah, it just seemed like the perfect story to me. Obviously, I didn't think it was the story back then. But a lot of it, I think I see now that, it's illusion building, isn't it?
Well, let me tell you, the Joseph Smith story is like the reverse of Bambi. He gets shot at the end, not the beginning. Sorry, that's with the fan. Oh dear, it's getting warm in here. Right then.
Himself war.
So the people understood. So this is one that gets me, right? So there's the whole thing of they draw close to me with their hearts, but their mouths are far. No, draw close to me with their mouths, lips, but their hearts are far from me, right? And this is the reason that Jesus Christ is given to Joseph Smith, that he shouldn't go to any of the churches, okay? But isn't that exactly what the church does today? You could say that of all of them. They draw close to me with their lips because anyone can say it.
Lip service.
Yeah, I can say Hail Jesus, but their hearts are far from them. And I think that's the same with the church today. I think it's constantly Jesus, 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 but when you scratch the surface, it's Joseph.
Yeah.
Or Russell M. Nelson at the minute, because he is just dominating. I can't remember any other like prophet absolutely dominating the airways like this guy does. At least Gordon B. Hinckley and Thomas S. Monson told jokes. You know what I mean?
Is that why you left PD? Because there wasn't enough joke telling going on?
Yeah, like I was there for the comedy and it ended. Okay, so moving through translation of the Book of Mormon. So we went over this in number 1, but I saw something this week that someone sent me. Sorry, if you're on here, thank you so much for sending this.
Sorry, could you say that again? My apologies.
No, that was...
He said, thank you so much to whoever sent this.
That's Siri. No, the Book of Mormon plates and math. Now, I think on Mormon Stories recently, LDS Discussions went through this. I think Mormonism Alive have been through it. But basically, the important numbers here are the size of the plates, 5 inches tall. So Joseph gave, and other people gave, very good kind of sizings of the plates. So then you can say, well, how thick were the plates? And someone over here, they've done thickness of plates to fit into that 5-inch stack. And the thinnest one that they think you could engrave is 1/64 of an inch thick. So that's tiny,
This is kind of blowing my mind.
So you get them together. So that's they're saying for a 5-inch stack, you can have 320 plates. Okay. So then if each symbol is a word, the Book of Mormon, when it was first published, was 349,240 words. It's now 286,000 odd. You know, for the most important and accurate book of all time, we've lost quite a bit of it. But so 350 odd thousand words. So the question is there enough space on these 320 plates to fit 350,000 words of English translated into glyphs?
What odds are the bookies going to give me on this, PD?
Not good ones.
Okay.
But basically, that would be equivalent to over 1,091 glyphs per page instead of the 250 that's spoken about from the archives, and it would take at least 4 times more plates to cover the totality of English words translated. Where did they come from? So the thing is, and I think it fits with Joseph's idea of Egyptian. Everyone thought back then that Egyptian, you get one character and that means a whole bunch of things. So like you see like an eagle swooping, it doesn't just mean eagle swooping. It means that eagle's been to the chippy, he's flying a bit low because he's got a full load, and he's headed past the South Cliff to drop off a small bag of chips to Mrs. Smith.
Picked up someone's toupee along the way.
Yeah. So that one glyph tells that whole story.
Okay.
And in that respect, if that was the case, then you could say, yeah, it fits, but it doesn't, because that's not how Egyptian works. And much like normal, English, hieroglyphics just mean very specific things.
There's a lot of information on that page, PD. I'm thinking that people are going to need to look that up and take their time. But I just love then at the bottom it says, underlined in red in capital letters with a full stop, this book is a fraud.
You know what? The church really needs to take notice of what they've done there, because the book is a fraud in capital, red, underlined. That means it's true. Anything that is written in red, capitals, underlined, means it's true. They should have put that at the beginning of this discussion.
I'm very musical, PD. I feel like I want to break out into song now. Is it that one? But I ain't saying he a gold digger. I feel with all that gold sat in front of him, how did he weigh up whether to translate it or just melt it down?
That's where the gold comes from in the first place, the treasure digging. And
this is what I mean.
Telling everyone I've got a golden Bible, but then I think it worked against him, because then all of his friends who he was treasure digging with wanted their own piece of the gold that he'd found. Yeah. So, and then he couldn't give it to them because he didn't have it. Everyone in the chat is discussing the first vision, I think, and yeah, okay. In principle 3, again, down at the bottom here, Joseph Smith recorded other revelations, and it goes on about the Doctrine and Covenants, the Pearl of Great Price, and says these books of scripture show us that God continues to give revelation to guide his children. Now that could be true, that God continues to give revelation.
Did anyone ever ask you why we don't add to these scriptures? That's one that gets me. If we've been saying since 1986 that, the Doctrine and Covenants is more scripture, and then we get to, we're in 2022, why aren't we getting more scripture now then?
Sister PD, this is why I bring you the open canon of scripture, which I would argue was closed long ago. So I did a bit of homework earlier. The Bible ends with the book of Revelation written on some Turkish island around 95 AD. The Book of Mormon ends 400 AD. The Pearl of Great Price ends with the Articles of Faith in 1842. The Doctrine and Covenants ends with section 138 in 1918. The official declaration on polygamy, Declaration 1, 1890. So in the last over 100 years, we've had one official declaration, number 2, on race and the priesthood, 1978. And you can see here on the right-hand side, the revelations, canonized revelations, and the fact that this is Spencer W. Kimball giving the race and the priesthood. This is Wilford Woodruff giving polygamy. Brigham Young, can't remember what he gave. John Taylor, this was the one. John Taylor or committee, because the church declassified the section in the Doctrine and Covenants as being given by John Taylor. It was now by a committee speaking about the death of Joseph and Hiram. So you can see that it's pretty thin on the ground. Joseph was the one who gave the scripture, and to say, because you always go on about like, oh, it's a true and living church. It's living because we receive revelation, but revelation is scripture, but we don't canonize anything. Like, who would have thought that by this time the family proclamation to the world would not be in the standard works, at least with the declarations in the back of Doctrine and Covenants?
Well, I was just going to say that if we moved on from declarations to proclamations now, but do they not mean that that's not the same?
I think the problem that they've had would be that the family proclamation is not the first proclamation. So if they canonize that one, do they canonize all of them? And if they canonize all of them, they're going to canonize a really nasty one about the Negroes.
Well, do you remember the slightly lesser viewed proclamation recently of Rusty in the Trees?
Rusty in the Trees?
Yeah, we've had the proclamation of the Restoration. You're gonna need to look that up. You were somewhere else back then. It was really recent, and it was really rubbish.
Rubbish.
You'll remember it.
Okay. Principle 4, the restoration of the church. Now this is where it all goes a bit awry for Joseph. Go on.
I was just about to say, is this not where it all gets good for the investigators? They've been down that, and now
this is what the church want them to know. And for anyone thinking, do they teach something different today? No. Preach My Gospel pretty much says the same thing. It just says it in a better order and more flowery language. Where Preach My Gospel, where I've seen big departures, I point them out. Or where there's anything extra that is, I think, good, we'll point it out. But Joseph Smith received the Aaronic priesthood. Now, the beginning of May, first weekend in May, every year is priesthood restoration weekend, and young men march all over the world to go and say a prayer somewhere and then get up on Sunday, and they all give talks about the priesthood being restored. And it's a really good story, isn't it? So we've got the Aaronic priesthood being restored by...
Oh, I'm so sorry. You didn't prep me on that one.
John the Baptist. And then we've got the Melchizedek priesthood being restored by...
Can you whisper that one in my ear?
Peter, James, and John.
Okay. I could just read it. My mind, I'm so sorry, has already moved to the female bit, but I'll just wait my turn.
Okay. So, but it's very interesting, and we'll get on to... So before we move on in the slides, it sets up the priesthood. Then it says what ordinances can be carried out by that priesthood. Funnily enough, baptism's one of them. Then it says the church was organized in 1830, and then it goes on about the name of the church and declares that it's the only true church. So this is almost what they would like you to think chronological order was, because the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood were said to be 1829. Then you've got the church being organized in 1830, and that brings us up to date today. The church is named after Christ.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the 1835 important bit.
We're about to get there, baby. We're about to get there. Right. So, priesthood restoration. In the early church, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery did not preach the need for literal bestowal of priesthood power. And that in the early church in the 1830s, there was no such thing as the Aaronic priesthood or the Melchizedek priesthood. No one knew about it until
1835.
1835. Boom. So John's visit was supposedly the 15th of May, 1829. And then this is weird. Peter, James, and John.
Oh, bringing the secondary, more important priesthood with no date recorded.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That's got to be one of the most important dates in like church history, and no one knows when it was.
Maybe it happened on the 31st of Never.
Or the 30th of February that year.
Yes.
So at the bottom, we can see that these specific problems pointed out by Mormon Think. Joseph and Oliver Cowdery failed to testify to members nor record anything about the appearances of John the Baptist and Peter, James, and John in any publications prior to 1834, 5 years after the events purportedly took place, nor did they teach that men ordained to offices in the church were receiving priesthood authority. Nobody in or out of the church knows the exact date of the restoration of the Melchizedek priesthood, which is just weird.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Smith and other early members stated that the first conferral of the Melchizedek priesthood happened in June 1831 in Ohio at a conference of elders, and that Joseph himself was ordained to the high priesthood by church elder Lyman White at the time. So they were self-ordaining in 1831, but then in 1835 we've come up with this new way. But this is the best bit.
All I'm going to say is they've missed a trick there. Had they got that date, we could have had a primary song about that.
Yes. So Joseph and Oliver changed the wording of earlier revelations when they compiled the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, adding verses about the appearances of John the Baptist and Peter, James, and John, as if those appearances were mentioned in the earlier revelations, which they weren't. The Book of Commandments, which later became the Doctrine and Covenants, says nothing about these appearances.
Yeah, there seems to be some confusion going on.
Yeah.
But that's not to be highlighted to the investigators during the discussion.
Well, no, up here, this wording at the top next to priesthood restoration is from today's Preach My Gospel, taken from the website in the last day or so. Do you want to read that?
After the appearance of the Father and the Son, other heavenly messengers, or these could have been angels, were sent to Joseph Smith and his associate Oliver Cowdery. John the Baptist appeared and conferred upon Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery the Aaronic priesthood, which includes the authority to perform the ordinance of baptism. Peter, James, and John, 3 of Christ's original apostles, appeared and confirmed the Melchizedek priesthood upon Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery, restoring the same authority given to Christ's apostles anciently. With this priesthood authority, Joseph Smith was directed to organize the Church of Jesus Christ again on the earth. Through him, Jesus Christ called 12 apostles.
Whoop, whoop. So the question is, if it was so important that he needed the authority directly from Christ through zombie apostles, why didn't he go straight home and write it in his diary? Why didn't Oliver? They could both write. Oliver was a school teacher.
Because they weren't instructed to do such a thing.
And why do they remember the exact date of John the Baptist coming? 1 zombie, but 3 zombies? Hell no. They don't remember that. They're just like, oh, yeah, it was... I can't really remember. I was kind of in a psychedelic mushroom phase. I know it was somewhere in that week. Yeah. So, as Mark Crispin would say, because Joseph invented everything. And we're about to find out why. So, 1835. What was happening in 1835 that meant Joseph needed to up the ante and make up John the Baptist coming and Peter, James, and John?
Please don't ask me any more questions.
That's just a rhetorical. Okay. Zion's Camp. This was one of the big ones. Zion's Camp was an expedition of Latter-day Saints led by Joseph Smith from Kirtland, Ohio to Clay County, Missouri, a long way, during May and June 1834 in an unsuccessful attempt to regain land from which the Saints had been expelled by non-Mormon settlers. So they heard that this persecution was going on, and Joseph was like, well, I'm putting together a posse of 2,000 priesthood holders who didn't know they were priesthood holders, and we're going to head over to Missouri and we're going to take back the land.
By priesthood power.
Yeah, and they didn't. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was unsuccessful. 14 people lost their lives in the process of just marching across. But yeah, there was a real crisis in his leadership in 1834. So when Joseph and Oliver, this section here is from An Insider's View of Mormon Origins from Grant Palmer. And Grant Palmer, amazing, the late Grant Palmer, sorry. But he speaks about the fact that they mentioned these when they were facing a credibility crisis that threatened the church's survival, because there was a guy named Hurlbut, D.P. Hurlbut, that was employed to investigate Joseph's past. And he was hoping to bring him down from the high station which he pretends to occupy. And Hurlbut basically went back to New York and started interviewing everyone about Joseph's treasure digging and about his, criminal, I guess, con man past and different things. So the church has really grown. No one really knows,
Who the
about
leader. Yeah, they don't really know about
they
him.
don't know him. They just see him, stand up. And this Hurlbut guy goes back and brings back affidavits from Joseph's in-laws back in Pennsylvania about Joseph's treasure digging and his supposed motivations for starting Mormonism. Also, E.D. Howe published his book in November 1834, and basically they were getting some real pushback from the brethren. There is apologies.
I just need Mark Crispin to type in the chat what goat means. Is this a young word? And I'm not down with the kids. Or am I reading too much into that?
Sister PD. Goat, greatest of all time.
See, I'm not down with the kids.
Yeah, greatest of all time. You need to watch more TV.
I'm stuck in 1835.
Yeah, but basically, as Alyssa's saying, there was the banking crisis, losing members' money and different things. I don't know if that was a couple of years after, but basically, Joseph had screwed up majorly. There was a big apostasy coming, and he needed a way to kind of make him top dog again. You
don't mean to say that as the church sees that they're losing people or come under threat, that they change something to give the people that are following them a little bit more of a reason to stay and feel more power, dear.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I've never seen that happen.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. But Joseph needed not just to give them more, he needed to reaffirm his place at the top. And the way he did that was made sure that all authority flowed through him. So before this time, all authority was conferred by, so his was conferred by Lyman White, who was an elder in the church. They were just ordaining each other. So then it gets to this point where he's like, no, wait, you need it from zombie apostle.
Which is where I got it from.
Yeah, because I've been hanging out with them in the woods.
Sorry, I'm still internally laughing about the goat.
Yeah. Names of the church. So we know that Russell M. Nelson's got a real issue with this. And I don't know why, because he screwed up. Right. Church of Christ. That was the first name. Do you know why that was the first name?
I do not.
Because in 3 Nephi 26:21, it reads, and they who were baptized in the name of Jesus were called the Church of Christ. So
I like it. Short, catchy, simple.
Yep. So Joseph set it up. They went full bore on the Book of Mormon and said, we are the Church of Christ, because we are the same church that Christ set up way back when. But that only lasted till 1834, because there were a lot of other Church of Christ as well, from other religions. So then they said, what can we do to really differentiate ourselves? Let's be the Church of the Latter-day Saints.
And dropped the Christ.
Yes. And that is where on this right-hand picture, the House of the Lord, this is a Kirtland Temple still today, 1834. Built by the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And that's why it says that. It's not to save space. That's actually what the church was called.
In 1834.
in 1834 up to 1838.
So
now-
we're on a 4-year cycle at the minute.
Yeah, their PR department was they got a pretty strict thing going. These next three were just names that other names they were known by, but there's no particular kind of date or anything.
Okay.
There's other names at the time that were knocking around. Maybe they were just floating out there to see if anyone liked them. The Church of Jesus Christ, the Church of God, or the Church of Christ of the Latter Day.
I don't like that one.
No. Oh no, wait. No, that's the one. Number 5, Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was 1838 to 1851.
It's just not right without the.
Yeah. Well, then what they did is obviously the church splintered in 1844 following Joseph's death, and Brigham Young took everyone back to the valley, or to the valley, not back to it, to Utah. And then the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with a little d, hyphenated and little d.
Is that right?
Yeah, they made a point of that.
She's reaching.
Here you go.
Oh, yeah. So it is.
No,
Yeah.
that's all capitalized.
Yeah, but I've never seen the hyphen before.
Oh, have you not? Isn't it weird that we were both able within like 2 seconds to put our hands on missionary badges for an apostate couple? Wow, the crap we keep.
And I've learned something new.
Yeah, so
We had a hyphen.
but they were incorporated as a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and there are many other businesses under that name, but that is now a copyrighted name that the church owns all the rights to, so we shouldn't say it too many times or they'll send us a bill.
Okay.
But you'd think that they could do a better job of going back to the Book of Mormon one. You know what?
I quite liked Church of Christ.
No, right. Okay. I'm predicting now. Get the bookies out. The bookies have had a good mention tonight. Get them out. 50 years time, there will be an adjustment in the Book of Mormon that changes 3rd Nephi 26:21, and it will say, and they who were baptized in the name of Jesus were called the Church of Jesus Christ of Early Day Saints. Come on.
You're still what's it in?
Okay, so the name. But principle 5, membership in the true church. So we're really getting towards this baptism thing now. If they have not already committed to baptism, they are going to.
I think you're wanted. Is this the official one whereby in discussion 3, if you'd not already done so in discussion 1? No, it's not. Is in your manual, are you told to make the invitation in discussion 1, or is it here in discussion 3?
You make the invitation constantly.
Okay.
You start in discussion 1, and if you've still not managed to beat them into it, you just keep on going.
I'm just looking there about tell the investigators a little bit about the current president of the church and the 12 apostles. Do you have a little fact, 12 facts about Rusty's? About Rusty that all investigators should know, and you pull out a little thing in your pocket?
Yeah, no, that would be good, wouldn't it? You know what? So Sister PD just pointed at my phone because it's just past 9 o'clock here in the United Kingdom, which means that the children's screen time has just switched off. So there will be children running around the house right now.
Trying to get through that door.
Yeah, and she was saying you're wanted, and I felt like saying we should teach the kids that they need to knock on the door and we say what is wanted, and they need to say, Erin, having cleaned my room, desires more screen time. I'll just sort that out. But in this section, it really goes for apostles and prophets today, because do you want to just read from, I'll just put the cursor here, they.
Oh, it kills me. I'm going to go a little bit further up. So, talking about these men, they receive revelation from God and have his priesthood. And therefore, thus they can teach his plan, perform his work, and direct his church with authority. They help clarify past confusion and misunderstanding by teaching the correct knowledge of the plan of salvation. We accept these men as prophets of God. We follow the guidance and direction the Lord gives us through them.
Yeah. And if anyone is struggling right now to think of any time when apostles have either contradicted themselves, one another, or confused us, here are a couple of examples. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. Prophetic confusion. So here's one. Quentin L. Cook and Brigham Young, both prophets, seers, and revelators, apparently. Brigham Young said, I will remark with regard to slavery. Inasmuch as we believe in the Bible, inasmuch as we believe in the ordinances of God, in the priesthood and order and decrees of God, we must believe in slavery. Sorry, she's looking at me because I was doing a silly voice.
No, and also just those silly words. I mean, if a prophet said it,
Yeah, we must believe in slavery.
We
Whereas,
must.
how much later? 1852 to 2021. Now, I said this in a previous video. I said that presentism does not work with prophets, seers, and revelators. And let me tell you why. These guys claim to speak for God. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So in 1852, when a prophet of God says slavery is correct, and he says that he speaks for God, that is God saying slavery is correct. I'm not saying that's correct because I think it's bull. But Brigham Young was speaking to the membership who believed him to be speaking for God. So they cannot claim, he was a product of his time or it was a different time. He was just speaking as a man. No, he was speaking in his office. Now, Quentin L. Cook in General Conference in 2021, one of the reasons for the violent opposition to our members was most of them were opposed to slavery. But yet the head of the church was for it.
yeah.
Seems a bit confusing.
Eye roll number one.
Do you want to go with Russell M. Nelson's classic from the last 10 years?
Is that because you can't do a good impression of Rusty?
Go on, let's see what you got.
I'm not going to try. I just wondered if that's why you gave it to me. Okay, 2016. And then, when the Lord inspired his prophet, President Thomas S. Monson, to declare the mind of the Lord and the will of the Lord, prohibiting baptism for children of LGBT parents, each of us during that sacred moment felt a spiritual confirmation.
Right, can I just say, he has gone full bore. This is what God has said. Spiritual confirmation, will of the Lord. The Lord
sorry.
inspired his prophet.
Is he talking about himself? For a minute, I thought he was telling me that I'd felt one.
No,
I was like, you can't say that for me.
no. He's talking about himself.
Right, okay.
Did he move your world?
So I can hear footsteps. They had a mini confirmation, a spiritual confirmation, each one of us, that sacred moment.
You see, he wasn't present in the church then either.
Yes.
Because the actual president of the church at that time was Thomas S. Monson, who was suffering from dementia.
I was just about to say that. Can we remember when? 2016. When did Russell M. Nelson come in?
No, I think having heard the stories around this spiritual confirmation, it was very much Russell M. Nelson and Dallin H. Oakes' show. They were running the church, seeing as Thomas S. Monson, who should have been, all of these men should have been retired a long time ago before they say these things. Yeah, so that was a sad one. But yeah, 2016 they went out there, they gave it, they said it's from God, and then 3 years later,
these policy changes allowing baptism for children of LGBT parents came after an extended period of counseling with our brethren in the quorum of the 12 apostles and after fervent, united prayer to understand the will of the Lord on these matters.
Can I just say, in the first one, the Lord inspired his prophet, okay, and declared the mind of the Lord. Whereas in the second one, it's been downgraded from the mind of the Lord to a policy.
Yeah.
These policy changes. And that's the thing about the church. There will always, it's doctrine until it's inconvenient, then it becomes a policy. So if anyone ever asks what's a doctrine, what's a policy, everything is a doctrine until it's unpopular.
Then we open the side door.
At that point, it gets kicked out of the policy bucket into the doctrine bucket into the policy bucket. So downgraded, and then we can change policies and procedures as much as we like and get away with it. So there are just two confusions or silly things that the prophets and so-called prophets and apostles have said. But are they really apostles? We've already spoken a little bit about the whole succession from Peter through the Catholic Church and different things. And Mormon Fleshwind, who we had on a couple of weeks ago with an amazing episode,
I'm excited to see this, PD.
speaks about Mormon apostles. Let's see what he's got.
The Mormon Church claims to be led by apostles who are continuously replaced after they die. Mormonism claims this is the restored original church established by Jesus with the very same organization. But is that really how the early church was led? To be one of the original 12 apostles, they had to have been with Jesus from the beginning and stayed faithful to him. That's how Matthias was chosen after Judas died. The apostles chose bishops to lead the various churches. Lists of those bishops and their successors are well documented for over 2,000 years. But what's not in all that record keeping of early Christianity? Apostles. The apostles were not replaced when they died. They were not meant to be a continuous office, especially since they had to have known Jesus. Now, Mormons will say there was a great apostasy and the line of apostles was lost. So how could that have happened? So maybe number one, maybe new apostles were called, but every bit of documentation and all the Mediterranean world was lost, even if they did get all those bishops for 2 millennia correct. Number two, maybe the Roman Empire was so surgically precise that they were able to kill every apostle exactly before calling new apostles. How about scenario number three? Then maybe every single one of the original 12 apostles were apostates, and they were the cause of the great apostasy because they didn't pass on their apostolic mantles. And option number four, and the most likely explanation, is that the prophet Joseph Smith just made it all up.
Yeah, well, as I say to you, going back to the days of being TBM, I look at myself now and struggle to think that there were so many things that were unquestioned. Part of the reason, though, for your show, PD, it's not necessarily, to be doing these questions, but that there's a community, that we come together, that we have a little laugh at ourselves for all those things that we did, and, that we're kind to ourselves now.
Yeah, but they're not apostles.
I didn't say they were.
Yeah, that's the point there. They're not apostles. These, I mean, they're not anyway. But even by that, if we believed in the whole apostolic succession, Mormon Fleshman made a good point there that they were never succeeded unless the person succeeding them lived in the time of Jesus. Now, some people argue the Apostle Paul. I think when I spoke with Mormon Fleshwound, he spoke about the Apostle Paul, and basically the Apostle Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. So he was saying, if you go by that, then all of these apostles could be apostles to the Gentiles. But yeah, they're not special witnesses of Jesus Christ, as they've admitted themselves when Dallin H. Oakes said that he has never seen Jesus Christ and he doesn't know that any of his brethren have ever seen him. So they're just poxy old businessmen. Okay, we're getting there now. The investigator is suitably warmed up and ready to give 200 likes. If you've not given a like yet, please do so. We're on 29. It really helps with the good old algorithm and getting things out there so everyone can come and partake.
Speaking of good old, what is that on your screen, PD?
The church loves a good mobile phone analogy, so I have got one too. and we'll get there.
What I'd be really impressed at is if you could bring one of those out from under your desk.
No, I'll speak to my wife, because usually when I need to find something, that's where I find it. She knows where it is. All right. Mini PD just coming to tell us someone's on the phone. We will talk to them later.
Out.
Okay, principle 6, attending church meetings and partaking of the sacrament. Everyone just switched off. So this is where they tell the investigator, you have to come to church to our poxy meetings every week in order to feel fulfilled. So it speaks about the sacrament. It says that Jesus instituted the sacrament and that we use bread and water. But did anyone ever wonder why we use bread and water and not wine and unleavened bread?
I don't know.
No, you didn't.
This is what's it. I'm thinking, what did you tell them what time church started? And they just looked at you and went, "You've got no chance. No matter what you said up until now, I am not getting out of bed for 9:30 on a Sunday morning."
Well, the thing is, they might get out of bed at 9:30 on a Sunday morning for like 10 minutes to get a drink or something, but for 3 whole hours.
And especially if there was no wine on offer.
It was a little bit of a stretch. So water, not wine. In 1830, the church adopted in every respect the Book of Mormon teaching and practice regarding the use of wine for the sacrament. So they used wine. When it gives the sacrament prayers in the Book of Mormon, it says wine. So somehow, though, Joseph Smith later felt free to procure a purported revelation from the same Jesus Christ, contradicting his previous straightforward commandment on how to always administer the sacrament, Doctrine and Covenants 27:2, where we are told that it mattereth not what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink when ye partake of the sacrament. I feel like you could apply it to everything. It doesn't matter what the church is called. You know what I mean? That's kind of it's all about just the spirit of it. Don't worry about it. But we're all militant about what the church is called. We have like 8-year-olds telling us off these days. We're not Mormons.
You mean to tell me that could be a block of Cadbury's Dairy Milk? We could each have one section of Dairy Milk chocolate to pass around.
Oh my
partake.
gosh. Yeah, that would almost get me to church with a thimble of milk.
I was wondering what the drink was going to be. It wouldn't have been a thimble of milk for me. But I also keep thinking, could you imagine the stories in our crazy sacrament meetings on a testimony if wine was served in those cups? It's bad enough as it is now.
Well, it speaks of the modification. The context of this modification, according to the caption, preceded the text of section 27. So in the header is that Joseph had gone to procure wine for a religious service, but returned without it, claiming that an angel had met him along the way and told him his errand was unnecessary and neither bread nor wine were vital to the ordinance. Now, I reckon Emma had given him some money for the wine. He'd gone on his way, and then he'd spent it at the bookies.
I cannot believe this is the first time, PD, that I am reading about this. This is straight up, you're not having me on.
No.
So all those times when the bread is forgotten on a Sunday and someone has to leg it home to get the 2 slices of bread, we could have just had a word with old Joe on front and we could have passed out a Werther's original to everyone.
It would have been much better, wouldn't it?
Oh, the times we could have saved.
You could have the priest just with that crap microphone undoing everything.
With the wrap.
Yeah. You know what? It's like, I wish I'd have known this, because as missionaries, we always used to ask the question, does baptism by immersion count if you do it in beer?
It's got to be a yeah.
Well, clearly now, it doesn't matter what you do it in. You know what I mean? There are far better ways to pass the sacrament, it seems. And back then, the word of wisdom wasn't even a thing. Like, people would look now, they'd be like, oh, we have water because of the word of wisdom. Not even a thing back then. It was just that he went out, said he met an angel along the way, and was told not to worry about it.
Interesting how those angels,
just appear.
Yeah, but I wonder, what the thing is. It's really, really important that you marry this 14-year-old girl, so I'm going to send an angel. It's really, really important that you don't have any wine this week. I'm going to send in it. It's not really the same relative importance, is it?
You know, could you imagine if I came home and said, right, I've just been to the shop, but I met an angel along the way and I didn't get you those bananas. I've bought some Ben and Jerry's because it doesn't matter what it is, he said. He says, just enjoy it.
No wonder you're always bringing rubbish up.
No wonder I'm fat.
True. That.
Right. So back to the phone, because I know that Sister PD is dying to know what it's about. Basically, it tells us.
Look at those hands on that phone. Is that like the Jesus receiving hand?
Oh my gosh.
Stretch forth thy hand and take it.
The little one is the officiator.
It's got a hole in that hand. Is that Christ's hand?
Oh my gosh, Sister PD. You know what? I just Google imaged it.
I just wonder if the church has got shares in Nokia.
You're like the person who sees Jesus in the grilled cheese. You're like, you see that dog's bum and you're like, it's Jesus. Right then. So basically, it sets the investigator up here to be like, you need to be baptized and you need to come to church every week.
Okay.
But if you don't come to church every week, you will fail. And that's where the phone comes in, because they put them on a pay-as-you-go plan.
What?
But they put them on a pay-as-you-go plan, as in you need to come to church every week and keep our commandments, or your service will be rejected. You'll run out of credit with the Lord. You cannot do it without coming to church every week and topping up your credit.
Yes, I have heard these analogies.
Yeah, and the reason, because they've got the whole one with the phone in the hat. So I thought,
I think we're on the family plan, which is that as long as one of us goes, or one of our relatives goes, or one of our parents goes,
can you roll over the data?
We'll be all right.
Yeah. That's it. Just let them go buy 100 gigs and we'll just take a few at a time.
But you're right, PD. And when we were preparing for the show, I know we don't have too much time left, but I was genuinely thinking about you saying to the investigators, you need to be there every Sunday, and giving the reasons why you need to be there every Sunday. And I was thinking about my childhood, and I was thinking about us as newly married couples, and how we would go on holiday and we would go to church. That had to happen. And how there are members who would say that if they miss but one Sunday, the whole week is wrong. It's all out of kilter because I haven't had my 2 hours as it is now, 3 hours as it was then. I think you're right. There is so much instilled on that 3 hours. And in a way, I don't mean to jump too far, but remember we were talking about one of the previous discussions about forming a habit. Was it really habit over anything else? If we didn't go because we happened to be on holiday and people would say that they felt that missingness, that there just wasn't something right, was that because of, what we were missing out on? Or was that just pure habit?
It was pure habit. And the best Sundays were the Sundays when it snowed. And here in the UK, it snows like 2 inches and the whole country shuts down because we don't do snow. So it snows. And then everyone's like, oh, think of all the old dears trying to get to church and all those broken hips. I could get there, but they couldn't. There's no church today. Woohoo!
No, I would just like to point out that when it snows in the UK, the bishop has got the decision to make on whether the building goes ahead or not.
Yeah, it was an easy decision, though.
Yeah, but we have been at that chapel moving that snow the night before so that church could go ahead.
I remember you heavily pregnant with a shovel, and me with a shovel, and a couple of elders trying to shovel the whole parking lot for everyone. And then I don't think church happened the next day. Or if it did, I don't think you got thanked.
And fast forward, we could have zoomed it.
Oh, you know what? But back then you couldn't take photos in the chapel because they wouldn't develop. Okay, no, thank you. And by this point, Sister PD, you are ready. Will you be baptized?
I have to be completely honest. I know that I say that I have supported you as a missionary PD, but I'm even more confused now. I kept saying that I wanted these lessons and I wanted the simplisticness of the gospel and I want it all laid down to me. I am more confused.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole point for investigators. They put them in a situation where they've kind of carved out a hole in their life and said, you don't know what happens here and you will never know what happens here unless you buy our product.
And just touching on that red box there, PD, about in the worship services and the members, based on what we were talking about habit and what things will happen, you know, it's almost as if saying you need to come on a Sunday to have a good week. You know, because attending the worship service will bring you blessings. And also that, you know, you need those people, you need the support of those members to strengthen you for the week ahead. You know, it's almost that kind of like, I guess it's like the protection, isn't it?
I remember always saying that Sunday was the worst day of the week because it was busier than work. Like you go to work, you've got a list of things to do, or you've got a very set role, and you get on with your job, and you go home and forget about it. Sundays, you go to church. 7:30, you start with Bishop Rick. 8:30 PEC. Nip home, pick you and the kids up. 10 o'clock, sacrament starts, and then you've got your 3 hours till 1 o'clock, and then you've got the queue outside the bishop's office to get through. And then if your counselors weren't, you know, up to it, or they had to go somewhere, then you had to go sit and do tithing. And then it was like 4 o'clock, and you'd done a full like 7 till 4 shift of psychological warfare with people who were bringing every problem under the sun, and I didn't have a hotline. I'm disappointed.
Well, also maybe just to finish on that topic there, it's definitely FOMO. And that's the,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry if I'm using, you know, I've got
They wanna
Mark
create their
Crispin's
own.
goat tonight. But it clearly says there, those who neglect these meetings, so fear of missing out, those who neglect these meetings miss blessings that the Lord had provided, you know, has provided. So if you were going to be blessed that week and you don't turn up, you can expect that blessing to go to someone else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's enough to be handed out, and if fewer people go, they get more. Richard Heath, let's end on this one. He had an investigator once who very loudly, during the passing of sacrament, asked the deacon if she could have some jam on her bread, and she could have had it, for it mattereth not. And on that note, church, if you're listening, jam on bread, and we'll all come back. But thank you for being with us this evening. Sister PD, thank you as always. And we will catch you on the next one. See ya.
Bye-bye.